Recorded from its live broadcast last Sunday afternoon.
Production and broadcast of Opera in the Park by KQED is made possible in part by funds provided by the San Francisco Examiner. Major funding is provided by the members of KQED.
Welcome to the 11th annual Opera in the Park concert, live from the Music Concourse of San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. Presented by the San Francisco Opera, Terence A. McEwen, General Director, and by the San Francisco Examiner, and the Friends of Recreation and Parks. Our soloists on today's concert, soprano Margaret Price, tenor Ryland Davies, and baritone Alan Titus, with the San Francisco Opera Orchestra conducted by Kurt Herbert Adler. Good afternoon and welcome to this magnificent outdoor opera house in Golden Gate Park, bounded by the Academy of Sciences, the DeYoung Museum, the Memorial to Francis Scott Key, the band shell of the Music Concourse, and overhead this splendid late summer afternoon. This is Sedge Thompson with John Rozak and several thousand others eager to hear today's concert, the annual Hats Off Fresh Air Opera Party. But there are hats everywhere this hot afternoon. Boaters, fishing caps, leather cowboy hats, dozens of paper hats. But earlier this morning at 8 o'clock, it was much cooler. People began arriving at the band course, carrying their picnics and books, thermoses and decanters. Some walked from the neighborhoods. Others drove in from Modesto, Chico, Solano, and Vallejo. Dozens of tables were set up with outdoor feasts, festively decorated and prepared, and later enthusiastically and eaten. Some headed to favorite spots from other years. Some searched carefully for the perfect spot. Blankets and rugs were spread out. People sketched and read, studied for quizzes, played cards, slept, ate, kissed, played Scrabble, and began sipping wine and champagne. Sunday papers under the London plane trees and the elms were read. The picnics were stunning and tasty. Many are now gone, except for dessert. Truly, this is the second opening of the 1983 opera season. It's a great day for people watching, and in a few minutes, the music will float into this September afternoon for us all. The audience is a relaxed and happy crowd, many spread throughout the concourse here under the trees, along the grassy banks, and beyond, all to hear this outstanding music this afternoon. And now, to the stage of the band shell here in Golden Gate Park, and to the General Manager of San Francisco Recreation and Parks, Mr. Tom Malloy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Golden Gate Park, and welcome to the 11th opera concert in the park that is sponsored by the San Francisco Examiner and the Friends of Recreation and Parks. First, a word about our sponsor. 11 concerts ago, we invented this, Mr. Adler did, in order to publicize the fact that there was a new group called the Friends of Recreation and Parks. And we had Tom Stewart and his wife, Evelyn Lear, and Irene Dallas, who's now down in San Jose, and about 2,500 people. And in that first year, the Examiner wrote the check. Well, the budget has expanded like everything else in the last decade, and they're still writing the check. So let's hear it for our sponsors. Second, if I may, because Terry McEwen is going to introduce the galaxy of artists. We have several today who will entertain you as part of this great ongoing series. But one of the things I like to do, and it has nothing to do with a hidden codicil in the contract, but I really think that sitting on this stage is one of the great orchestras of the world, and this is the only Sunday they're not in the Opera House, so let's hear it for our band. We have here in the park every other Sunday something called, that we're justly proud of, the Golden Gate Park Band. But Golden Gate Park Band number 2, here they are, and I couldn't be happier. The last thing I'd like to say before introducing Mr. McEwen is to say a word about you. Because Nancy Adler a few years ago was stunned when, during an encore, she said they not only knew the music, they knew the words and sang along as part of the chorus. And I must say, for those of you, and you are part of the San Francisco Opera audience, for anybody who was there on Friday night, when the curtain should have gone up at 7 o'clock and went up when it should have come down at 10:28, there were still 4 deep in standing room, and believe me, at 2:01, when the final curtain came down, there wasn't a seat in the house. And that says an amazing thing about you, the audience of the San Francisco Opera. So let's hear it for you. And without any further ado, Mr. McEwen to introduce our artist.
For those of you who are too far away, this T-shirt that I received as a gift last night says it all. I survived opening night, 1983. Our dear friend, Carlo Cosuta, who is in his hotel room watching us on TV right now, is not as hoarse as I am. And I'm glad about that. And I think it would be nice if we sent him a greeting of goodwill, because we know he'll be better and he'll be back with us. Carlo. Another gentleman I would like to greet, who is not here today, and is in the middle of a rehearsal of Otello, is tomorrow night's Otello at the San Francisco Opera, Mr. Richard Casserly from the Metropolitan Opera. Richard, welcome to San Francisco. And as a matter of fact, at this moment, somewhere in New Jersey, Mr. Placido Domingo is singing a concert. As a result of rumors you may have heard, we have some changes in the program for a change. And so let me tell you about them. The program will open with Maestro Adler and the orchestra doing the prelude from Die Meistersinger of Wagner. Mr. Alan Titus, the Harlequin in our wonderful Ariadne of Naxos, as a matter of fact, the wonderful Harlequin in our wonderful Ariadne of Naxos, will sing Avant de quitter ces lieux from Gounod's Faust. That will be followed by our star tenor of the day, who is making an unexpected appearance, that is unexpected for him, who will sing from La Traviata, Alfredo's aria dei miei bollenti spiriti. That will be followed by Maestro Adler and the orchestra playing the Intermezzo from Manon Lescaut, Puccini. And then Miss Margaret Price will sing Io son l'umile ancella from the first act of Adriana Le Couvreur. That is also different from what is printed in your program. The first half of the concert will end with the Prelude and Liebestod to Tristan and Isolde, conducted by Maestro Adler with the orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful time. I'll be here after the intermission to tell you a little more about what's happening in the second act. Enjoy, and thank you for coming.
Terence McEwen, General Director of the San Francisco Opera. And certainly good to hear him up here. And
before I leave, I think I should introduce the man who started all this and who made the San Francisco Opera a wonderful place to go to. Maestro, the unique Kurt Herbert Adler.
One of the other cancellations during this long, drawn-out program was that of Carol Milnes, who was expected to be the baritone in Othello and also to sing today, and a hearty hello to him, too. Now on stage, the General Director of the San Francisco Opera Emeritus, Mr. Kurt Herber Adler, will be leading the San Francisco Opera Orchestra. The first work is the Meistersinger von Nurenberg Overture from Wagner's only comic opera. A stirring opening to today's Opera in the Park concert at Golden Gate Park with the San Francisco Opera Orchestra led by conductor emeritus Kurt Herbert Adler. We've heard the Prelude, the full-scale overture by Wagner to his opera Die Meistersinger von Nurenberg. Wagner wrote the Prelude several years before the rest of the opera, and he himself conducted it many times on his concert tours throughout Europe during the time that he was writing the opera itself. Well, members of the crowd are settling in here this afternoon in Golden Gate Park, and the vocal part of this afternoon's Opera in the Park concert begins with one of the best-loved of all baritone arias from French opera, Gounod's Avant de quitter ces lieux, from the second act of his opera, Faust. It'll be sung this afternoon by the young American baritone Alan Titus, who's singing the role of Harlequin in Strauss's Ariadne auf Naxos this season at the War Memorial Opera House. The production opened last night to great acclaim, and especially for Mr. Titus's performance. The aria he'll sing for us is sung in Gounod's opera by Valentin, brother of the opera's heroine, Marguerite. And here on stage, Alan Titus to sing this aria about entrusting his sister to the care of God, and if he should die in battle, he says, he'll look down from heaven to protect her. Music by Gounod from Faust, sung by Alan Titus, our baritone today, here at Opera in the Park in Golden Gate Park.
Chercher la gloire au son des ennemis, le premier, au bord de la mêlée, il est combattre pour mon pays. Ainsi vers lui, je me rappelle, je veillerai sur toi fidèle.
American baritone Alan Titus, the first aria of this afternoon's Opera in the Park, Gounod's Avant de quitter ces lieux, originally written in English, and we heard today the French version that Gounod used. The words, before leaving these parts, birthplace of my ancestors. Alan Titus performing with the San Francisco Opera Orchestra here this afternoon. Temperature here, 85 degrees. The hats are everywhere. Many people taking shade under the plane trees and the elms. On stage now, General Director Terence McEwen.
Ladies and gentlemen, before the appearance of our next star, I think it might be a good idea for me to tell you his name. Not only is he surprised to be here, but perhaps I was a little surprised at the time. Stunned is the word. I haven't been to bed yet since Friday night. This is a very special man. He's been coming to San Francisco for many years, and many years ago, Maestro Adler invented the idea that he should sing the role of Cassio in Otello, and I happened to be visiting San Francisco and had never heard such a beautiful sounding and such a convincing Cassio dramatically. When this man sings Cassio, you know why Otello can become jealous. He's a marvelous man and a beautiful artist, and I'm very proud that we have today Mr. Ryland Davies, the great Welsh tenor, to sing for you an aria from Traviata.
Terence McEwen, suffering from laryngitis, enjoying a luxury that singers dread. Of course, his T-shirt saying, "I survived opening night 1983. Here now, Ryland Davies. Accustomed to outdoor events, he's a former rugby player, conditioning for a strenuous world of grand opera. The aria from Verdi's La Traviata, De miei bollenti spiriti, from the start of the second act.
Volaron già 3 lune da che la mia Violetta agi per me lasciò dolizi e amori delle pompose feste o valli omaggi avezza vede a schiavo ciascun di sua bellezza. Vedor contenta in questi ameni luoghi tutto scorda per me. Qui presso a lei a rinascere mi sento e dal soffio d'amori io vivo quasi in cielo, sì, io vivo quasi in cielo. Io vivo quasi in cielo.
Ryland Davies singing miei bollenti spiriti from the start of the second act of Verdi's La Traviata. And La Traviata will be given as part of the season's repertoire at the War Memorial Opera House as well. Mr. Davies wearing an open-collared pink shirt, Master Idler in shirt sleeves, the front of the band show colored with begonias and gladiolas this afternoon. And Mr. Davies will be back in the second half of today's program with an aria by Donizetti. Manon Lescaut was Puccini's first mature opera and his first major success. Indeed, it brought him greater acclaim than many of his later works. The opera is based on the same novel as Massenet's opera Manon, although it mostly treats different aspects of the story. The Intermezzo, which we're to hear next, links the opera's second and third acts after Manon has been denounced to police as a prostitute, and before her lover, the Chevalier de Grieux, finds her again about to be deported to America. Puccini appended a quotation from the original novel by the Abbé Prévost to the score of the Intermezzo. How I love her. My passion is so strong that I feel I am the most unhappy creature alive. The attempts I have made in Paris to obtain her release. I've implored the powerful. I've knocked on every door. Here now, conductor Kurt Herbert Adler to lead the San Francisco Opera Orchestra in the Intermezzo from Puccini's Manon Lescaut. The Intermezzo from Manon Lescaut by Puccini, performed by the San Francisco Opera Orchestra and by Kurt Herbert Adler. Now bowing to the crowd here, the thousands here in San Francisco Golden Gate Park. And this season we'll have a chance to hear the opera at the War Memorial Opera House as part of the San Francisco Opera's fall season. Welsh soprano Margaret Price has been one of the most sought-after international stars in the Verdi Mozart repertoire for over a decade now. And this season, she appears with the San Francisco Opera in one of her most acclaimed roles, Desdemona, in Verdi's masterpiece Otello, which opened Friday evening. It was with the San Francisco Opera that she made her American debut in 1969 as Pamina in Mozart's Magic Flute, and she's returned to sing with this company regularly ever since, the last time for the new production of Aida in 1981, and it's with great excitement that we're looking forward to hearing Margaret Price. During the rehearsal, the crowd was hushed when she was rehearsing her aria that we'll next hear. It's from Francesco Cilea's opera Adriana Le Couvreur. Here in a gossamer white gown, carnations tucked into the back of her hair, soprano Margaret Price. The aria we'll hear is Il son l'umile ancella. I am no more than the humble handmaid of the great art of theater. soprano Margaret Price, and the aria from Adriana Lecouvreur, Il son lumile ancella. People standing here in the band concourse at Golden Gate Park, standing for soprano Margaret Price. And she'll return in the second half of today's opera in the park with an aria by Rossini. Margaret Price waving to the crowd as she leaves the stage here, followed by Kurt Herbert Adler, one of the great bel canto sopranos of our day, and certainly fabulous to have her here singing to the thousands gathered in Golden Gate Park. Kurt Herbert Adler will return in a few moments to conduct the San Francisco Opera Orchestra in the Prelude and Liebestod from Wagner's Tristan und Isolde, ascending the first half of this festive Opera in the Park concert as it began with the music of Wagner. Wagner wrote Tristan between 1856 and 1859, breaking off the composition of the Ring of the Nibelung in the middle in order to do so. Its story of two lovers whose passion is consummated only in death was drawn from ancient Celtic legend. The Prelude is concerned with just one theme, a yearning, sad phrase that swells and relapses again and again throughout the Prelude's length. And in keeping with the opera's theme of unfulfilled love, Wagner never once resolves his harmonies in a simple cadence. The Liebestod, or love-death, provides the perfect symmetrical complement to the unfulfilled yearning of the Prelude. It rises to a magnificent climax with the theme of the second-act love duet. Here now, the Prelude and Liebestod from Tristan und Isolde by Richard Wagner. Kurt Herbert Adler leading the San Francisco Opera Orchestra. shouts of bravo, Mr. Adler, coming from this crowd here at the Golden Gate Park for his performance of the Prelude and Liebestod from Tristan und Isolde by Richard Wagner. Tristan was probably the most influential of all of Wagner's works, but at least as far as other composers were concerned, it was the music of Tristan that pointed the way out of the traditional harmonic patterns of European music. But it waited 6 years for its premiere in Munich, when it was received so coldly that it was discarded after 3 performances. Meanwhile, a projected premiere in Vienna had been abandoned after 57 rehearsals. Singers and orchestra insisted that Wagner's music was unsingable and unplayable. We have an intermission here, but first I'd like to tell you that on the second half of this afternoon's program, we'll hear music by Verdi, Thomas, Donizetti, von Weber, and Rossini. Some orchestral pieces and arias with our soloists today, Alan Titus, Ryland Davies, and Margaret Price.
Halftime, and we'll take about a 10 or 12-minute break.
You're watching and listening to this Opera in the Park concert on member-supported television and radio for the Bay Area, KQED Channel 9, and KQED FM 88.5 in San Francisco. This concert is also being seen live on KVIE Channel 6, Sacramento, Stockton. It will be rebroadcast this Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on both KQED television and radio. Now it's intermission time here in the Music Concourse at Golden Gate Park. Earlier today, KQED's John Rozak had a chance to spend a few minutes with our soloists today, Margaret Price, Ryland Davies, and Alan Titus.
What I'd like to know first off, was opera your first calling? I ask that because I know in the case of you, Mr. Davies, you actually were a rugby player to begin. Did you ever think you'd make opera a career?
Never gave it a thought. I was right into rugby very seriously, and although that's right. The legs are the only thing that are still in good shape. But I used to sing a lot in the shower room, and I was encouraged by my colleagues on the rugby field, hey, you might be able to sing. And then, of course, being in Wales, once people recognize you've got a voice, they encourage you. And I took off, have some practice in a choir, things like that. And then I was given solos to do. And then to cut a long story short, I was heard in what we call an Eisteddfod, sent to college for an audition at Manchester Royal College of Music. And 4 years later, I joined the Glyndebourne Chorus. And I met Margaret about a year after that, I think. Mm-hmm. She was singing Amor or something in...
Amor, yes, in...
Popeye, was it?
No, Jephthah. Jephthah. I was the angel.
Handel's Jephthah, that's it.
What about you?
Me, I was going to be a biology teacher.
Really?
Yes. I was very serious-minded in those days.
You're no longer serious-minded?
Not in this profession. You can't afford to be. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today.
Well, you seem to have done very well at your new calling.
Well, thank God, I suppose.
How about you, Mr. Titus?
Well, I was going to be in the FBI, but unfortunately, yes. I was.
Got a number, Margaret?
But you see, I was young at the time, and I didn't realize that you had to study law. So that sort of nipped that in the bud. But I actually thought that I would... the action and all the things that Mike Connors used to do on TV, when I was 14, that was very, very attractive.
Can I jump in? This is a coincidence. I was nearly talked into going into the detective service in Wales.
Is that right?
I don't know what I would have detected, but you never know.
Well, you certainly get some action on stage, though, with opera. In the case of your roles, especially.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Well, you're active, your movement, especially in Harlequin and the Strauss role.
That takes a lot of movement. The Commedia dell'arte, they never stood still because somebody would always throw something at them. So that's why the style is involved in Commedia. You always keep moving, so no one can throw a lettuce or tomato. I'm sure that's
right. Do they still do that?
Yeah. Well, it developed into the tradition. I wouldn't check that, though, with the history of theater.
All right. How do you prepare for a performance like today's? It's so much different than the stuffy, sometimes stuffy, formal performance in an opera house, and the informality here is really quite distinct from that. Does this affect your singing at all and your preparation for your singing?
For me, no. I mean, whatever or wherever I sing, I take it very seriously and rest up as much as I possibly can and give of my best. I mean, one can't always, but I think that's what we all try to do, is to that's to be on a bit of a serious note for a minute.
Well, yes, but she's right.
We always try to give absolutely 100% of our best, and that's for today also. I mean, we've got thousands of people who will maybe, young people who maybe in the future be our next audiences, and therefore you have to encourage them, to go to the theatre.
So you keep your standards just as high as in the house.
Absolutely.
I would say, like Margaret, I try and rest up, try and be healthy, and the fact that it's a non-paying audience really has nothing to do that we owe it to the composer who wrote the music, first of all, to do our best on that day. And if the public enjoy it, and he smiles on us, it's a bonus.
Well, I think everything has been said.
So you just keep going without really any.
Well, I mean, preparation is I don't think about it. I just come here and it happens. The environment gets the adrenaline going. You meet your colleagues and talk with your colleagues, and you get involved in a kind of a pattern that always happens. And
I think to answer your question, I always check my voice for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, and if it's very good, and I say thank God, and then leave it to, as Alan says, the adrenaline and the excitement of a unique occasion. In my experience, I've never sung in front of here at Golden Gate Park. I think there's going to be 25 or more thousand people out there.
Yes.
I don't think we'll see each one individually, but hopefully they'll hear us.
I don't want to worry you, but you know how many million are going to be watching on TV?
On TV, yes.
Oh. Well, let's hope they enjoy it too.
This is a truly unique experience. Certainly you've all sung outside, you've sung out of doors, but the quality, the high standards, and it being connected with the opera is something special, isn't it? Have you ever done anything quite like this, either separately or together?
I must say I've never sung outdoors. This is my first occasion. Thank God it's hot.
Does that help you?
Well, I mean, if there was a wind blowing, it wouldn't be too funny. That's when you lose your voice.
My last experience outdoors was in Lyon, in France. Mm-hmm. We were doing the Abduction, the Seraglio, and it was incredible. They cancelled the first concert because of rain and thunderstorms, and then when we actually, opera performance, then when we did the performance, it looked so ominous, I tell you, and the wind was blowing, and it was an all-curtained type set. Curtains were drawn back and revealed the next scene or whatever, but most people saw every scene all the time because of the wind was blowing the curtain. It was a very funny experience.
Miss Price, I understand one of the arias that you're singing today is from an opera that you're preparing to sing next in Munich, is it?
In Munich, yes. I do a new production in March of Adriana Lecouvreur.
Is this the first time you're singing in public anything from that opera?
No. To be perfectly honest, I gave it a try in Zurich a few months before I got here. But I still don't know it properly.
And you're working on it now?
I'm working on it.
Is this a tryout?
She is honest, actually. Yeah. She's very direct.
I wanted to ask you, too, Mr. Davies, about your upcoming role here in San Francisco as Jack in the Tippett Opera.
Yeah.
That's a challenge, if I'm not mistaken. That's a contemporary opera. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, yes, it's contemporary, certainly to American audiences, because it'll be the American premiere. And it's new to me, too, John. Like all contemporary operas, it's new to us. We have to get in there and find out, is there anything there for us for a start? And there's some lovely music, I must say. The character is simple, rather Papageno-ish, and my girlfriend is like a Papagena type. The music is a little different than Mozart, but what we have to do, it seems very nice, and they're the two down-to-earth characters in the piece. The rest is a kind of mystique and very interesting it's going to be, I think.
And Mr. Titus, you're going to, of course, be in the Strauss, Ariadne, and you'll be doing Harlequin.
Right.
I've got to ask before we end this about Friday night, which of course made opera history, opera news. It made national news all over. You, no doubt, in opera before had dramatic experiences, but perhaps the most dramatic was Friday, that flying in at Placido Domingo to sing an Otello. You've sung it before with Mr. Domingo, have you not? So
yes,
it was a little bit easier on you then, wasn't totally cold.
It wasn't difficult for me at all, because we've done it so often together that I think we both know every inch of what we're going to do. I mean, it's quite incredible. Nothing came as a surprise whatsoever.
Some people wondered if there were surprises because, you know, when you start wrestling about, you wondered where you were going to go off to.
Well, I mean, sometimes
that was
you
a bonus
click.
that they'd done it together.
You click and you sort of say, okay, he's doing Paris 76, or he's doing La Scala 77, or whatever, and so you just sort of work into it. I mean, fortunately, I've done it practically everywhere with him, so.
That was a wonderful experience. What about you, Mr. Davies? Of course, you were part of that performance.
Well, the last time I sang Cassio was in Madrid with Placido, but that was about 7 years ago, and like a million years ago in my head. But I knew that we were going to have an exciting evening, and when we all calmed down and thought, okay, enjoy this lovely 3-hour wait, we waited.
You waited. We all waited.
The audience were fantastic.
They were.
They were so.
Yes,
I've
so
never
patient.
known such a
Because
patient.
some of them were there from 6:30 already.
Yes.
Because they hadn't.
Because it was a 7:05 start. Incredible.
Well, it all sort of winds up with the Sunday opera in the park after the Friday opening. And this, frankly, for me, and I'm sure for you, is just as exciting as Friday night's opening with all of that excitement.
It's earlier.
It is. We're all here on time.
Yeah.
And now we're back to music. I want to thank all three of you very much for taking time to talk to me today. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A fascinating insight to the world of opera behind the scenes and recorded behind the scenes a few hours ago during the rehearsal here at the Golden Gate Park Band Concourse. And Alan Titus, Ryland Davies, and Margaret Price will be back following this intermission to sing some more for us and the thousands of people here in Golden Gate Park this afternoon. Doves and pigeons flying across the trees, and it's the first time that I've seen the windows of the tower at the De Young Museum open. Its breeze has been scurrying through the music concourse, not enough to rustle the leaves, but welcome to us all this very hot, sweltering September afternoon. Before today's concert, KQED's John Rozak had the opportunity to talk to our conductor today, the San Francisco Opera's General Director Emeritus, Maestro Kurt Herbert Adler.
Mr. Adler, in addition to the great voices, we have some great orchestral music today that you're playing with the opera orchestra. How did you choose your selections for today's concert?
I select numbers which I believe the audience in the park and the audience on television will like. I have some Wagner excerpts, the Prelude to the Meistersinger and the Prelude and Love this from Tristan, so we are commemorating 100 years since Richard Wagner's death. I have a Verdi, which ends very loudly, which is always very welcome in the park, a lot of cymbal and brass. And finally, the Freischutz Overture, I selected because it is leading into the last vocal number, which is a Rossina aria, and I think there is a good transition from what we did before.
So you did it musically as well as personally, your personal favorites.
I think that's the way one should always do it. When you conduct, you must consider for whom, what you conduct, and what you like and what you don't like.
You're General Director Emeritus of the San Francisco Opera, but you're still actively musically, in training young singers in the Marilla program. That, I imagine, is part of your lifelong commitment to the art of opera, is it not?
Indeed. It is very important to me that talented young artists receive enough attention and guidance. And I have started many affiliate programs with the San Francisco Opera and otherwise, and I hope that those programs will continue. Last summer, I did several master classes in the Marilla Opera program, and I worked for my taste really not enough with selected young singers individually and ensemble work. And you can really not pay enough attention to the development of young artists because we have witnessed too many careers which went wrong very soon. But I must proudly say that many of those young people who have been in the Marilla program, and with some of them I worked, none of them got ruined.
Nationally, you're also active in arts and arts policy as a member of the National Council of the Arts, a presidential appointee.
You are talking to the Honorable Kurt Herbert Adler, as they call me in Washington.
Excuse me.
The Honorable, there's 26 honorables on the council, men and women, and it is really the question of advising the chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts. That is Mr. Frank Hotzel, the Honorable Frank Hotzel. We are meeting at least 4 times a year for 3 days, and all grants and other problems faced by the endowment are passed on to the council.
I'm sure you must feel that you can further the cause of opera by your participation nationally.
Well, there is a lot of interest in opera, or especially as they now call it, in music drama. You know, there's also actually music theater, musical theater, etc. There is a large background that we have of musical theater in our country, and we are trying to revive those things. There will be orchestrations made now which are up to date and whatnot, in order to be able to perform the musical theater pieces which are very old.
Well, all of that, no doubt, helps to continue alive the tradition of opera and to popularize it, as does the Opera in the Park broadcast today, and we're going to get back to that. We thank you very much for taking time to talk to me today.
Thank you, John. It's
nice
always
seeing you
a
again.
pleasure being with you, and it's a pleasure being in the park.
And it's always a pleasure to have Kurt Herbert Adler leading the San Francisco Opera Orchestra, and to be here in the park, and to be here with the thousands who came today. That interview was recorded during the rehearsals a few hours ago, and now we're going to go back live to KQED's John Rozak, who has a special guest on stage.
I'm talking now with Terry Robbins, the Director of Promotion for the San Francisco Examiner. And of course, Terry, the Examiner has a very important role in today's concert. Tell me about it, will you?
As a matter of fact, you're right. This is our 10th year of giving the money that makes this concert happen. The Examiner is very proud to be involved with the San Francisco Opera.
This has been sponsored by the Examiner, as you say. I believe it is, 10 out of the last 11 years?
Absolutely correct. And if it weren't for the Beta Breakers that the Examiner also puts on, this concert wouldn't be held.
I understand that the money that is raised on the Beta Breakers actually goes to support still another community event, this one.
This is our favorite of all the gifts that we can make to the public. The Opera in the Park concert is our way, the Examiner's way of thanking the people of San Francisco and the Bay Area for making the Beta Breakers a success.
You are involved in Beta Breakers, are you not?
Yeah, up to here.
What is your involvement?
I'm the race director for the Beta Breakers. So as soon as I take off my opera hat, I put on my Beta Breakers hat. Yes.
Well, that's fantastic. I suppose that you prepare all year for events such as this. And as you say, it's an important community event for the Examiner. Do they do other things of this sort?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've just kicked off a new campaign to raise $100,000 to take care of senior citizens on Christmas Day. So you'll be reading and hearing a lot about that soon.
Well, thanks so much for talking to me very, very briefly today. And as you know, the Opera in the Park concert is one of the great annual events here in San Francisco. But it takes place in one of San Francisco's great urban environments, Golden Gate Park, where we are right now.
Golden Gate Park is a place like no other. Its 1,000 acres cut a dramatic green path through San Francisco's crowded streets, stretching for 50 city blocks from the ocean on the west to the Panhandle in the east. Golden Gate Park has always been a place of refuge. From the beginning, it was conceived as an urban woodlands, a bit of country in the middle of the city. The creation of this great park, though, was considered impossible. When the idea was first proposed in the 1860s, the area was nothing but sand dunes and wild grasses. The area was beyond the city limits of San Francisco and was known as the outside lands. Few ventured out to the area. Those who did hiked all day, rode on horseback, or took one of the early streetcars that plowed through the dunes. Today, the park is more popular than ever before. A wide variety of recreational activities are available year-round. Rowing on Stowe Lake, running along Kennedy Drive, fly casting, and horseback riding, to name a few. An estimated 10 million visits are made to Golden Gate Park each year. Visitors are drawn by top-notch museums like the Academy of Sciences, the De Young, and the Asian Art Museum. The Japanese Tea Garden, a 5.5-acre park within a park, provides a respite of beauty and tranquility in its quiet gardens. The Conservatory of Flowers is one of the park's most popular attractions and is the oldest remaining structure in the park. Over 100 years old, it stands today as evidence of successful restoration efforts by the park. Other restoration projects that have recently been completed include the Dutch Windmill in the west end of the park and the Sharon Building, opening early next year as a citywide arts and crafts center. And renovation of the famous Herschel Spillman Carousel, also at the Children's Playground, is scheduled to be finished early next year. As is Huntington Falls at Stowe Lake. Golden Gate Park, the realized visions of landscape architect William Hammond Hall and longtime park manager John McLaren, is a living legacy, rich in its offerings. Whether it's a little bit of the city and the country that's desired, or a little bit of the country and the city, it's a place that has something for everyone.
And by the way, if you want to learn more about this wonderful Golden Gate Park of ours, the Friends of Recreation and Park offer free guided walking tours 4 times each weekend. And for information, you can call 221-1316. That's 221-1316. They have some really knowledgeable volunteer guides, and it's a wonderfully pleasant way to spend part of a Saturday or Sunday at Golden Gate Park. The number again is 221-1316. That's the number for more details. Excuse me, that's 1311. 221-1311. And you know, I don't think we could spend a more pleasant Sunday afternoon with music, with the artists that we've had from the San Francisco Opera, and now with the General Director of the San Francisco Opera, Terrence McEwen. Terry, thanks for joining me.
Nice to be here,
How are you
John.
doing this afternoon? Your voice is given out.
Yes, my voice is given out. I think if I never, as I said earlier, if I never believed in psychosomatic illness before, I certainly believe in it now. I identify so much with my singers, and I studied singing, and that I, get hoarse when they get hoarse. As a matter of fact, generally speaking, I get hoarse at the beginning of the season, although not quite as hoarse as I am now. And the day the season ends, my voice comes back clear as a bell.
Well, it's understandable considering what you went through on Friday and what we all went through with you. The most dramatic San Francisco Opera opening ever. The last minute flying in of Placido Domingo from New York to fill in for the indisposed Carlo Casuta. Tell me, what did Placido Domingo say when you rang him up in Anthony Bliss's office at the Metropolitan Opera? What was his first words to you after you asked him to come to San Francisco?
I don't remember exactly, except that the first 2 words were, "Oh, Terry!" "Oh, Terry," with lots of R's. And then he said, "It sounds very exciting. I love to do it. You tell me about the planes and the helicopters and what I have to do." And I called my wife in Spain and asked her advice, because he never, or generally never, does anything without his wife Marta, who was a singer as well, joining in her good sense, good common sense. He called Marta and couldn't get her. She was out to dinner. So he called me back 20 minutes later and he said, "Terry, I go, I come, I do it." And so I told him the helicopter would be 1 block away from where he lives. There's a little heliport at 60th Street and Sutton Place in New York.
Yes.
That's 1 block away from Blas's apartment. And the helicopter flew him to a little airport in New Jersey, Teterboro, New Jersey. And the plane was waiting. He said he would want some food, preferably a steak, some soup, and some coffee. And no alcohol, no wine, nothing. Just to build his energy up during the flight. We managed, in a very roundabout way, which would take me an hour to tell you, to get the food, and he got on the plane. Then, once the plane was in the air for about an hour, we began having problems with headwinds. And whereas it takes 5 hours on a big jet to come from New York area to San Francisco, it takes 6 on a small one. But
well, he made
the
it,
headwinds
though.
were. He made it.
And that was. I think that was the most dramatic opening. But what's in store for the rest of the season? If that's the highlight, which it could be, what else do you have in store that you can point to?
I think, opening night has to be a special excitement for everybody, and perhaps it was even more exciting this year. What I would like to say, by the way, before we get into that, is that I don't think there is a city in the world where we would have had such a wonderfully cooperative, understanding audience that waited, first of all, from a 7 o'clock curtain to a 10:30 curtain. You realize that we opened at 10:30. We started the opera at 10:30 on Friday night, and we finished Ariadne at 10:30 on Saturday night. So we did 2 evening performances within 24 hours. But they were wonderful, the audience. They were so good-humored. I walked through the lobby regularly to reassure people that he was on his way. He called me from Nebraska and said they were going to be later than expected. But the audience was marvelous. And at 10 after 2 in the morning, when we finished the performance, they were still there. There weren't more than 100 empty seats, and gave the cast a standing ovation.
Well, what more do you have in store for the San Francisco Opera audience for the remainder of this season?
Well, I hope not to have any more 10:30 curtains. I'd like to start
on
at
time.
7:30 and 8 o'clock. And I just happen to have with me a San Francisco fall brochure, which I carry with me all the time. Of course, last night was the premiere of our new Ariadne auf Naxos, a production that I brought from the Metropolitan Opera, which is designed by one of my my favorite designers, Oliver Messel, who unfortunately died before I got this job. So I wanted San Francisco to see one production designed by him. I think it's gorgeous. It went very, very well last night. It was an enormous success. And our next opera after that will also be conducted, as was Ariadne last night, by Christoph von Dochnany, the new conductor of the Cleveland Orchestra, who is also the intendant. He has my job at the Hamburg Opera. His wife, Anya Cilia, who's one of the most exciting dramatic personalities on stage, partnered by Evelyn Lear, who's no piker herself in the drama department, will be the stars of Katya Kabanova, which will be sung in English.
That should be sensational.
A Russian tragedy with very, very heavy drama and very beautiful music. Then we go into a very popular opera, Traviata, with an all-Italian cast, with Katia Ricciarelli and a wonderful Italian baritone making his San Francisco debut, Leo Nucci, and a new Italian tenor, Alberto Cupido. I haven't had a chance to ask him yet how he pronounces
One must ask
his
the
name.
artist.
I've heard him sing, but I've never met him. And so an all-Italian Traviata, followed by what should be another highlight for this season, which is the American premiere of Michael Tippett's greatest opera, I believe, Midsummer Marriage. When I lived in England in the 50s, I was lucky enough to be able to attend the world premiere of that opera.
That was quite an event, I understand.
It was something very, very special. And we've got a very special production of it lined up for San Francisco.
Including one of our singers from today.
Ryland Davies is one of the
as
leading tenors. It has 2 leading tenors, 2 leading sopranos, and a big bass baritone part, and lots of mezzo-sopranos and basses and baritones around them.
Well, it sounds as though this season is really shaping up to have your own stamp on it, your mark finally, as a Terry McEwen season.
I guess so.
In sum, what would you say it is?
I would say it's 50% of Terry McEwen season, in the sense that, we'll get there year by year. Obviously, I'm using productions of Otello and Traviata, and Gioconda, various other operas that were not commissioned by me, so they aren't in that sense Terry McEwen's operas. However, they're generally speaking productions that I respect, that were commissioned by my predecessor, Kurt Herbert Adler. And so, as the new McEwen productions come in, like Midsummer Marriage, like La Grande Duchesse, Offenbach with Regine Crespin, you'll see more of McEwen's type.
I want to ask you very briefly, before we wind up, and we've got to end pretty quick here, the fall international season with all the big stars is what everybody thinks of as San Francisco Opera, but what about the training of future opera stars? Are you involved in that?
Certainly, we're very much involved in it. I think the second most important thing in my life is the San Francisco Opera Center and the activities training young singers for the future. I want to form a basic company of young stars who will be the great stars of the future. And then we can have a few guests in occasionally, but we'll have a basic company of the very first quality.
Well, we have it now, and we hope to continue having it in the future. And I must add, you finally got your Russian opera in, and we're ending the season with it,
right.
with Boris.
I'm very happy to have Nikolai Gyahudov coming to sing his greatest role.
And I'm very happy that you took the time to talk to me today here at Opera in the Park. It's been a great pleasure. It's been an exciting day, and now let's go back to the concert for some more exciting music. Thank you, Mr. Mika. Now to Sedge Thompson. You will. You rest. Get your voice back. Goodbye.
Well, as you can see, there's a wonderful en famille scene there. That's Kurt Herbert Adler and Nancy's son Roman in the arms of soprano Margaret Price, and certainly wonderful scene, and just part of the informality and relaxed, delighted atmosphere here this fine Sunday afternoon in Golden Gate Park. Kurt Herbert Adler, his son Roman, and Margaret Price. I don't know if what they're quite talking about, obviously secrets of the trade that won't even be revealed to us here. And members of the audience here delighted to see this scene, this informality here. Margaret Price in her diaphanous gown holding Roman wearing a blue jumpsuit with red t-shirt. And members of the audience are coming out. People are wearing paper hats, as you can see, waving magazines and programs to keep themselves cool. The breeze that was here earlier has died down. And you can see that just one of the banners is barely lifting off of the flagpole there, maybe even be tied up somewhere. The bandshell in which this concert is being held was built in 1900 with funds donated by Klaus Spreckels, after whom the shell was at first named Spreckels Temple of Music. It was built of Calusa sandstone, and it's 70 feet high at the center and can hold up to 100 musicians. And it's very nearly filled with the San Francisco Opera musicians today. And incidentally, some of the shots of the stage will include the Renaissance maidens arcing over the top of the bandshell. They're Italian Renaissance figures sculpted by Robert Aitken many years ago. This Opera in the Park will continue with music of Verdi, Thomas, Donizetti, von Weber, Rossini, and we hope there'll be some encores. The audience here has been so enthusiastic. We hope that we'll be able to encourage our performers today to come back out and sing again. What a wonderful afternoon. People listening to the music, stretching out on the lawn, many collecting sunburns and tan. Now we're going to the main stage where the General Manager of Recreation and Parks, Tom Malloy, is speaking to the audience.
Our extended audience. This is the third year that KQED is broadcasting this live here in Northern California. And for those of you who have an irrepressible urge to see yourselves on TV, try Wednesday night, because they're rebroadcasting the whole concert. So you'll be the stars on Wednesday night. Now, very briefly, I'd like to introduce a couple of representatives from our sponsor who will present some tokens of appreciation to our artists. And this will be very brief. And to that end, we have Mr. Scott Beach, the newly anointed music critic, and Terry Robbins. And as a treat, we have Mr. Adler and both children today.
Thank you. Here comes the whole Adler family. Hi, Nancy. What a ham. It's been 10 years of its 11 years that the Examiner has had the tremendous honor and great fun of sponsoring Opera in the Park. And Maestro Adler thought this whole idea up and has given us so many thrills. I don't know how much applause one man can stand, but let's give him one more, all right? I certainly hope that the Examiner has the privilege and the honor of continuing to sponsor this fine event every year for as long as there is a San Francisco Opera and there are newspapers. There has been made, for the first time only so far, a commemorative poster. It's by Lynn Larson, And as a gift to our friends who have been here today, we have 4 framed copies for Maestro Adler, for Ryland Davies, for Alan Titus, and for Margaret Price. Here it is right here. Thank you all for coming to sing for us and to play for us today. Long life and success to you all.
That is thrilled since last year.
Here, give me the baby. I'll take the baby.
Kurt Herbert Adler holding his son Roman high in the air for all the audience here to see, and Nancy Adler has just carried off their daughter Sabrina.
It really is a family affair.
Margaret Price now holding Roman, waving to the crowd, helping wave Roman's hand, perhaps as a classic conductor's gesture. The second half of the Opera in the Park concert begins with one of Verdi's most celebrated overtures, I Vespri Siciliani, the Sicilian Vespers. Cheers and applause from the audience here at the Golden Gate Band Concourse for the opening work on the second half of this Opera in the Park concert. Giuseppe Verdi's overture to his opera, I Vespri Siciliani, the Sicilian Vespers. It was Verdi's 19th opera, midway between La Traviata and Otello. The Sicilian Vespers was written for the Paris Opera, where 19th grand opera was grander than anything else. Most prominent among the composers who had made the Paris Opera the center of operatic extravagance was Giacomo Meyerbeer, and in the Sicilian Vespers, Verdi in the 19th century set out to out-Meyerbeer. Now on stage is the present general director of the San Francisco Opera, Terence McEwen.
Just to confirm the second half of the program for you, ladies and gentlemen, the next number will be our wonderful baritone, Mr. Alan Titus, singing the drinking song from Thomas' opera, Hamlet. That will be followed by Mr. Ryland Davies again in one of the world's favorite tenor arias, Una Furtiva Lagrima from L'Elisir d'Amore. Maestro Adler will then conduct the overture to Der Freischutz, as it says in your program, and Miss Margaret Price will sing Bel raggio, lusinghier from Semiramide. We have after that a surprise encore for you, featuring two very brilliant young artists. You know, at the San Francisco Opera, one of the things that makes us most proud is the Opera Center, which combines all of our training programs and includes things you know about, like the Merilla Opera Program, Western Opera Theater, Brown Bag Opera, the Adler Fellowships, and the Showcase season, most of which, of course, were begun by Maestro Adler when he ran the company. Two of the brightest young stars of the San Francisco Opera Center will be here to lead us in Verdi's drinking song from La Traviata, Miss Ruth Ann Swenson, and Mr. Walter McNeil. Enjoy the second half of the program. Thanks. I always forget one thing. I've been asked to tell you, by the way, that Miss Margaret Price is going to make a personal appearance in the San Francisco Opera Shop on Grove Street, just adjacent to, or no, that's not the right word, diagonally from the Opera House, across the street from that place that looks like a plate of false teeth, you know, Symphony Hall. Miss Price will be at the Opera Shop on Wednesday, the 21st of September, from 1 to 3. So if you'd like to meet her, come along and say hello. Thank you.
Terence McEwen, alerting us to the second half of the program and making comments of architectural criticism here in the Bay Area. We're going to be hearing next, as Terence McEwen said, the drinking song, the Brindisi, from Thomas' Hamlet, sung by baritone Alan Titus. O wine, dispel the sadness that weighs upon my heart. It's from the second act. Hamlet is in a falsely merry mood as he prepares the traveling troupe of actors for their play within a play, wherewith to catch the conscience of the king. They're waving to somebody in the crowd, blowing bubbles. A favorite piece among French lyric baritones, Hamlet's drinking song from Hamlet by Thomas. Au vin, dissipe la tristesse. O wine, dispel the sadness that weighs upon my heart. Alan Titus, who sang last night at the San Francisco Opera as Harlequin in Ariadne auf Naxos. Alan Titus, again on stage, he first came to international attention in 1971 when he created the role of the celebrant in Leonard Bernstein's theater piece Mass at Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Una Furtiva Lagrima has been long one of Donizetti's most popular arias, indeed one of the best loved in all the lyrical Italian repertory. It's sung in the opera L'Elixir d'Amore, the love potion or elixir of love, by the hero Nemorino, when he finally understands that his beloved Adina really loves him. Here now is tenor Ryland Davies, Cassio in the current production of Otello, to sing Una Furtiva Lagrima, a furtive tear escaped her eye.
Si può morire, si può morire.
Smiling to the cheering audience here in the Golden Gate Park Concourse, tenor Ryland Davies as the hero Nemorino from Donizetti's L'Idea d'Amore, the Elixir of Love. Una furtiva lagrima, the aria, a furtive tear escaped her eye. An aria that every lyric tenor in the world loves to sing and is perhaps sung in public and in the opera houses of the world. Today, Ryland Davies was appearing in the San Francisco Opera production of Othello as Cassio. Now back on stage with a bouquet of flowers, mixed carnations, baby's breath, looking to the sky, then bows again, taking the cheers of the audience. Ryland Davies, who scored one of his first successes some 20 years ago as a young Welshman for a rugby team. Kurt Herbert Adler will be back in just a moment to conduct the San Francisco Opera Orchestra and the overture to Carl Maria von Weber's opera, Der Freischutz, the Free Shooter. It was written in 1821. It's an extraordinary story of devilish magic at work in the forests and mountains of Germany. It has an atmospheric theme that conjures up the enchanted depths of the forest, magically scored for four horns. Enchanted music of the forests for our opera concert in Golden Gate Park this afternoon, the overture to Carl Maria von Weber's opera, Der Freischutz. Its premiere in Berlin was a triumph. The German romantics loved it. In Vienna, Dresden, and London, it gathered further triumphs. And in London, the opera had to be given simultaneously in 3 different theaters. Maestro Kurt Herbert Adler, a master of the Germanic repertoire, leading the San Francisco Opera Orchestra this afternoon. And we await now the return of soprano Margaret Price, who's going to sing the aria Bel raggio, lusinghier from Rossini's Semiramide. And you may recall the famous production of Semiramide that opened the 1981 fall season with Montserrat Caballé and Marilyn Horne. You'll remember the extraordinary vocal displays with the florid writing by Rossini for the 2 principal women. The aria we're about to hear, one of the most famous of Rossini's grand opera arias, comes at the beginning of the opera's second scene. Semiramis, Queen of Babylon, is awaiting the return of Arsace, the victorious young general. She hasn't yet discovered that Arsace is in fact her own long-lost son, and in the great aria Bel raggio, lusinghier, she's filled with the hope and joy of expected love. Margaret Price, soprano. Bravas, bravas for soprano Margaret Price as the character Semiris from Rossini's Semiramide in the aria per raggio, lusinghier. A beautiful, enchanting dream of love and content was shown to me at last. And she became the character, the Queen of Babylon for us all here today in the Golden Gate Park. The audience on their feet cheering her performance, cheering her performance. She's handed Furtiva Adler a carnation from the flowers tucked at the back of her head. Brava, brava, as she leaves the stage here at the concourse of the Golden Gate Park, this 11th annual opera in the park. The audience is cheering on their feet, everyone hoping for an encore. There's some whispered discussion going on off stage at the moment, whether we'll hear something more. Welsh soprano Margaret Price, now back on stage. She's taking the applause. Will she sing for us again? We'll just have to wait and see here this marvelous Sunday afternoon. One of the great bel canto sopranos of our day, Welsh soprano Margaret Price. The shouts from the crowd here for an encore. We'll have to wait and see. Bravas, bravas from everywhere. They're still debating this. There's discussion going on off the stage here. Terence McEwen is applauding and smiling, hoping she'll sing again. She's wiping a tear from her eye. She's coming back. Is that a nod? We'll have to wait and hear it. Furtiva Adler appears to make an announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, orchestra, Madame Price will sing a sonata dove sono from the marriage of Figaro.
She's responding to the audience. This aria is from the third act of The Marriage of Figaro. Soprano Margaret Price preparing for her encore. The audience has quickly settled back down again. And she's now become the Countess from The Marriage of Figaro, singing Dove Sono, Mozart's aria, sung by soprano Margaret Price, receiving the bravas from the audience here at the band concourse of Golden Gate Park. Margaret Price, one of the great Verdi sopranos of our time, and clearly one of the great Mozart sopranos of our time. Margaret Price, Desdemona, in the San Francisco opera production of Verdi's Otello, which opened Friday night. A spectacular and stunning late-night opening with Placido Domingo. And a treat to have an encore from her this evening, persuaded by Terence McEwen and Kurt Herbert Adler and the thousands here in Golden Gate Park this afternoon. Margaret Price asks the San Francisco Opera Orchestra to stand up. And they're saying, no, the applause is for you. She says, no, back up. All right, she says. Then she says, well, how about if we all stand? Now they're all standing. This warm summer afternoon, Margaret Price in her diaphanous white gown, the drapery blowing out from behind her, with all the members of the opera orchestra in white shirt sleeves making a stunning setting against the sandstone-colored bandshell and the ring of color from the begonias and the gladiolas here in Golden Gate Park. There's discussion going on off stage with Kurt Herbert Adler and Terence McEwen and Margaret Price, and they seem to be in almost a set of costumes. And there are balloons and a bucket of champagne and glasses that Tom Malloy from Recreation and Parks is bringing on. It appears that there's going to be some kind of a festivity, a festive occasion here, as if we could top the festivities already today. Ruth Ann Swenson and Walter McNeil, young artists from the San Francisco Opera's Adler Fellowship Program. This encore is going to be the Brindisi, a drinking song.
Libiamo
Libiamo, the drinking song, the Brindisi from the first scene of Verdi's La Traviata, sung by everyone on stage, as you've seen, including Ruth Swenson and Walter McNeil, who first came out, two young artists from the San Francisco Opera's Adler Fellowship, with Ryland Davies, Margaret Price, Alan Titus, Kurt Herbert Adler, Terence McEwen, Tom Malloy, drinking champagne as the balloons from Marie's Balloons soar high overhead, released from above the band concourse today and sailing now off to the south this fine September afternoon. Colors of orange and yellow, green, white, purple, red, all soaring, tiny specks into the sky, floating high just as the music is floated out to this audience here today. The Brindisi, the drinking song. Marvelous music, including this Opera in the Park. Here, this 11th annual Opera in the Park broadcast live from San Francisco's Golden Gate Park, the band concourse. Members of the audience working their way toward the stage here today to toast in return the fine performances that we've heard this afternoon. People on their feet clapping above their heads. Cheers for more, cheers for more. But it seems that we've moved on to the champagne. And we've had a wonderful taste of the opera season yet ahead. In a moment, I'll have an opportunity to tell you about the opera season, samples from which we've just heard sung so magnificently this afternoon. Earlier, we began with music of Wagner, the Prelude to Die Meistersinger von Nurenberg, arias from Gounod's Faust, Verdi's La Traviata, Intermezzo from Puccini's Manon, Lescaut, an aria from Chile's Adriano le Couvreur, and from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, we heard a prelude in Liebestod in the first act. And so we conclude today's 11th annual Opera in the Park from the music concourse of San Francisco's Golden Gate Park, presented by the San Francisco Opera, Terence A. McEwen, General Director, and by the San Francisco Examiner and the Friends of Recreation and Parks. Featured soloists, soprano Margaret Price, tenor Ryland Davies, and baritone Alan Titus, with the San Francisco Opera Orchestra conducted by Kurt Herbert Adler, and with soprano Ruth Swenson and tenor Walter McNeil. Today's soloists are all appearing in the San Francisco Opera's two opening productions, Verdi's Otello and Richard Strauss's Ariadne auf Naxos. Both Margaret Price and Ryland Davies appear in Otello. It was originally planned that Cheryl Milnes would be here as today's third soloist, but he had to cancel all performances for several months, and baritone Alan Titus stepped in to replace him this afternoon. Apart from Otello and Ariadne, the season contains 8 other works, several of them new to San Francisco Opera. They include such popular works as Verdi's La Traviata and Mussorgsky's Boris Godunov, as well as less often heard works such as Puccini's Manon, Lescaut and Janacek's Katya Kabanova. There's French operetta, for the first time that anyone can remember, Offenbach's witty and satirical Grand Duchess of Gerolstein, with the great French soprano Régine Crespin in the title role. And there is, for what many will be the high point of the season, the American premiere of Sir Michael Tippett's The Midsummer Marriage, which was first given at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden in London in 1955. So Michael Tippett's opera Midsummer Marriage, part of this exciting 1983 San Francisco opera season, which runs through the first week of December. And what a variety of arias that we've heard today. Arias by Gounod, Cilea, Verdi, Thomas, Donizetti, Rossini, and Mozart. Certainly a wonderful second grand opening of the San Francisco Opera season, as we've been privileged to be at here today. So on behalf of everyone who's been here since dawn and before, on behalf of the opera, John Rozak, and your announcer, Sedge Thompson, thank you very much and goodbye.